Hi again, everyone, and we get ready for game number 3 of Georgia's football season. Number 1 ranked Georgia taking on South Carolina in the SEC opener in Columbia, South Carolina, Saturday at noon. DJ Shockley is here, and we're going to talk a little bit about Georgia and South Carolina. And the Bulldogs are 2-0 through 2 games. South Carolina comes in at 1-1. Shock, what's your take on this Georgia team through 2 games? Is that number 1 ranking deserving, do you think?
I think when you compare them to what you've seen around the country, or at least what you've seen in the top 5 teams in the country, I think Georgia is definitely deserving of the spot they're in. Obviously, making a statement week 1 versus the number 11 team in the country. We'll see how good Oregon is. I mean, they end up putting a bunch of points up their second week. But I thought this is a team, when you watch them play, they just look different than everybody else around the country. And I think both sides of the ball, there's something different about Georgia. And I think it's fun to watch simply because of what happened last year. And everybody expected Georgia to maybe take a step back. And it doesn't seem like they've taken a step back. It looks like they still have a dominant team. I think, giving up 3 points here in 2 games, and broke a record for amount of points not giving up since a long time. So it's been fun to watch their team. Obviously, last week was a game that it wasn't up to Kirby's standard, but when you watch them, you say, man, this is an impressive team, and they continue to get better every week, I believe.
You mentioned the last week's game. I mean, you're down there on the sidelines during the game and in the locker room. Do you feel like his take on that game was worthy? Did you see the same thing that he saw, that maybe there were a few more mistakes in that game than there were in the opener?
Oh, no doubt. I mean, obviously, they were just a more talented team, so they could do certain things to Sanford that, maybe it wouldn't work against an SEC opponent or to another team. But there were areas where it was Georgia related that hurt you. And when that becomes an issue, that's when obviously you look at it and say, this is a unit, this is a team that deserves to continue to keep trying to get better. But my thing is, there were instances in the game where, if you're in the red zone a couple times and you don't score, or, Sanford has a couple plays and, they get outside on the edge on you. So you just don't usually see all the time. And it felt like there was a little sluggish start to it. I mean, you and Z talked about it on the game. Like, it just didn't seem like it early that they were hitting on all cylinders. And Kirby, he was pretty adamant after the ball game about, this is not the way we play. This is not the standard that we play at. And we have to play to a certain standard every single game, regardless of who the opponent is. And he said, hey, we need our leaders to step up. And usually this is the time when they do that. So there were some instances in the ball game where you felt like there was a lull on both sides of the ball, but primarily on offense, when you thought, hey, the week before we scored 49 points against Oregon, and this week in the second half we're struggling to score points. So yeah, there were some times where I know when they turned on the film, the players weren't happy to see what was the outcome.
What are your thoughts on a fast start this week? It's an early game, so you're going to have to get that energy and create that energy earlier in the day. 12 o'clock start on the road for Georgia, so it's a hostile environment, of course. But you want to get that fast start just to build that juice and to grab some early momentum, certainly in an SEC opener.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking when you started to say, how do you get it going, is that juice. And sometimes people think about, you got to bring your own juice when, you're playing an opponent you should beat, or it's an early kick with an opponent that, you're not really excited about. But this is the same situation. You go on the road, everybody's going to be against you, first time in a real hostile environment, and you got to have to bring your own juice. You got to find a way to motivate yourself. And yeah, that crowd can get you motivated, but at the end of the day, you got to find a way to do it with your teammates. And I think there's going to be a lot of guys on this team who haven't been in this environment. There's going to be a lot of guys who are first-year guys, or even freshmen that we've seen play in the first couple of weeks, that this environment is going to be different. So you got to find a way to get out to a fast start and kind of get rid of some of those early game jitters and play the style of football that I think Georgia expects. And it's going to be interesting to see if Georgia can do it, because obviously those 12 o'clock games are always hard, regardless of who you're playing. it's hard to get going for those. It may take a quarter and a half to really kick it in and say, all right, we're starting to feel good about where we are as a team, and now we can implement our game plan. But I think in an environment like this, in an SEC game, you don't want to give them any kind of hope because, South Carolina's been struggling in their first two games. I know they got the first win over Georgia State, and then last week they lost to Arkansas, giving up 44 points. But this is a team that's last in a couple categories, like rush defense, rush offense. I mean, they haven't done good things on those sides of the ball. And if you give them any kind of hope, any kind of confidence, it can give them a lot of fuel, especially with their fans rocking here early to get going.
Yeah, they've definitely struggled running the football through two games. They're averaging well under 100 yards a game, but Spencer Rattler is the quarterback, the transfer from Oklahoma, who had a kind of an outstanding first year at Oklahoma and led the Big 12 in passing yards and touchdowns, then lost his job the next season, then ended up transferring to South Carolina. He's familiar with the head coach, Shane Beamer. They joined forces again. What's your take on what you've seen from Rattler so far in their first two games for South Carolina?
It's I think there's no doubt he's a talented kid. I think there's no doubt he has the arm talent to throw it all over the yard. We know he has the confidence. I mean, if anybody's seen the Netflix series that he was on, he doesn't lack any kind of confidence in that area of playing quarterback. But it's going to be interesting to see how he responds to this kind of defense. They got a team that gets after him. And he's an athletic guy. He can move, he can run, he can make some plays outside the pocket, but I'm not sure if he's seen the speed of Georgia. Yeah, he just played Arkansas, but I'm not sure if he's seen what Georgia's going to bring to the table and the amount of stuff that he's going to see in game. And the things that you see in the first couple of games, there's some things you say, wow, this kid can throw it, he can sling it, he can, put it into any spot he wants to. He can, you heard Kirby talk about it this week, he can throw it 70 plus yards. That's all well and good, but how are they going to respond with pressure in his face? And last week versus Arkansas, when I went back and watched a little bit of it, there were times they brought some pressure on him, and he got outside the pocket and he held on to it. And those are the plays that I know Shane Beamer is not excited about, but that's the kind of player you got. Is he always thinks the play is alive. He always thinks he can make a play with his legs or his arms. So it's going to be interesting to see if he learned from last week of just throwing the football away, living for another down. Or is he going to try to be the hero versus Georgia and be the guy that says, hey, I came in and be the defending national champs at home? So it's gonna be fun to watch how Georgia matches up with him. But I think we'll have a good plan versus.
You played in Columbia. I want to go back to playing on the road in that atmosphere. Describe what it was like. You can recall your playing days in Columbia, South Carolina. What do you recall?
I mean, from, we call it, I guess, the Gamecocks flying around and the sandstorm, all that kind of stuff. And I mean, it gets raucous. I'm not gonna lie. It's one of the more fun environments to be in. I say this one and Auburn and LSU are three of the top ones you like to go play at, simply because of the fans are just ruthless, and ruthless in the fact that they're loud. They're always on you. They constantly have noise going throughout the play, and they're a smart bunch. I mean, they know when their offense is on the field, and not to make noise and all that. But this is going to be a raucous environment. They're going to be excited to be able to get Georgia in here. Everybody looks at Georgia now and says, "Hey, the defending national champs. Let's bring our best for them." And I know Coach Smart says, "Hey, we would never be hunted here at University of Georgia," but we can be honest. Everybody's hunting Georgia. And this is another time where you got a coach who was at Georgia, Shane Beamer, was here, knows, what Kirby's program is about. And he would love to, make this thing competitive and have a chance in the fourth quarter. But this environment definitely helps their team, and it helps them get after it. And thinking about South Carolina, thinking about this game and what Shane Beamer has been, I just go back to last year's game. And it's funny when, they asked him after the game about playing Georgia, and he goes on this rant about all the 5-star guys they got, and they got a guy 340 pounds, and he just looked at him like, "Are you kidding me?" Well, you got to get ready because they got a new bunch coming at him. So it's going to be fun to watch this in that environment.
What are a couple of things that you feel like Georgia is going to be able to do to have success in this ball game? I mean, Georgia's a large favorite here on the road in the SEC. That's not very common. Obviously, everybody thinks Georgia's the far better team here. What do you think Georgia does well against South Carolina to get this win?
You know what was great to see last week was see the Dogs be able to run the football. I know we want to put up, 40, 50 points on Sanford and all that stuff, but I thought we did a good job of implementing. We're going to, just put our hands in the dirt and come forward and be the aggressor, be the more physical team. And I think that's what bodes well in the SEC. And I think that's what Georgia has to do heading into South Carolina is run the football. And there's nothing more demoralizing than going 10, 11, 12 plays and 8, 9, 10 of them are run plays coming right at you. And we talked about it earlier. South Carolina is struggling against the run. They've given up 495 yards in 2 games, which is the most in the SEC. And the closest team to them is Vandy at 411 yards. So they're giving up boatloads of rush yards on the first 2 ball games. And I know the plan this week will be the same to go and make a run of football. So I think that's an advantage for Georgia coming into this ball game. And being able to run the football would definitely take that crowd out of it because there's nothing like standing up for all that time and watching them just, go first down after first down running the ball.
Do you feel like we'll be more traditional running between the tackles this week, or we continue to work with Kenny Mack and the sideline to sideline passes, which is kind of an extension of the running game, get him the ball out in space? Do you feel like we may go back to more of a traditional style of running against the team that struggled to stop it?
Scott, I think what's interesting is Georgia has shown the ability to be able to run the football sideline to sideline, go east and west, and then get vertical. And like last week, they showed the ability to just come right downhill at you. I think whatever the game really dictates is what the Dogs will do. Now, the first game, it was about getting Oregon on the perimeter. It was about, the little bubble screens or, the outside zones that really were good versus them getting the edge. And last week we're just bigger, we're faster, we just go downhill at them. I think you will have a mixture of both in this ball game to be able to use it. And you talk about the extension of the run game. I think you have to use that because we got some dudes on the outside that you have to get the rock to. I remember Todd Monken talking about, hey, I got a good problem and I got so many talented guys that I got to try to get the football to, whether it's tight ends, whether it's receivers. That's, I think, the biggest thing that we're going to see this week is how often can they get the ball on the perimeter? How often can we throw a little bubble screen out to Brock Bowers? We haven't seen him just explode yet. Maybe this is the game where Brock comes on and he has 2 touchdowns, 100+ yards, and say, okay, well, that's why he's one of the top tight ends in the country. Or we've seen Ladd in the first game be a guy that make plays for you. So there's so many different weapons that I think Georgia can use. I mean, Kenny McIntosh coming out of the backfield. I mean, there's so many ways I think Todd Monken can attack this South Carolina defense that's going to be interesting to see. But I think in the first 2 games, you've shown the ability to be able to do both and really dictate how you want to go about the game.
Shock, thanks for the knowledge as always. Georgia and South Carolina on Saturday at noon. DJ and I and everybody else on the radio crew will be on the air at 8 a.m. for the pregame coverage of our clash with the Gamecocks, Georgia and South Carolina in Columbia, SEC opener. So 8 a.m., join us on the radio if you would, and we'll see you on Saturday. Shock, thanks a lot. Go Dogs.
Go Dogs.